I expect a small group. I'm going to give it a few more minutes after the hour in case someone saw my message. So we'll start in about 2 minutes. In the meantime, uh, I will read the note well. Uh, Remember, just in case some of you have missed it, this is the note well for the ITF. It's a reminder that ITF policies on, patents or code of conduct are in force for this interim. Just a minute. I guess my voice was on strike for coffee. Um, so just to remember, this is an ITF interim of the IDR working group. We follow all ITF policies on patents or code of conduct. This is the list of things to read. It's online. I'm going to expect that you can read it and not waste your time. If you have any question, if you think someone's code of conduct isn't what you expect, drop a note to the chairs. That's part of our discussion. We can give you pointers on how to resolve, or we can give you pointers within the working group on what we're doing. And within ITF in general, there's an ombudsman. If I so, we're going to go right ahead into the interim introduction. So give me just a moment while I pick. Okay, this particular interim is focusing on the design team work for IP Basic. Okay, uh, it looks like I have the wrong date. I will correct that. Okay, so the basic concept for today is I'm going to entertain questions on the draft ID. Here's IDR FlowSpec V2 basic. It is our minimal subset. Then we're going to have a discussion on is it a good subset? If there's and take comments on the additions for IP filters and IP actions. Next week we will go through more IP filters and how that might be added. But these interims are all being run as design teams, meaning lots of discussion. So I'm not upset with the small group of people joining us, but Jeff and I are gonna try to get, and Kay are gonna try to get some information back. Draft ITF, draft ITF hairs. I'll try that again one more time. I think my mouth is still on strike from more coffee. Draft hairs IDR FlowSpec V2 IP Basic has started adoption. This is our simple minimal subset to fix the problems with FlowSpec V1 that the working group has mentioned. I'm going to go through that, go through the concepts. It's an adoption call. This type of adoption call is, in some sense, a courtesy because this work has already been adopted. But what we're trying to get a feedback for is we're trying to get feedback on did we pick the right minimal subset? We want to try to stay into two realms simple with the basic with user ordering the FlowSpec V1 uh, filters and actions and deterministic feedback fixes. What are deterministic feedback or fixes? The problem with FlowSpec V1 is certain things didn't fail nicely. The TLV didn't fail nicely, and the conflict between actions didn't fail in a good way. It could fail in one or take operation would be another way to see it, in one router on one way and another router in a different way. That's not interoperability. So we're trying to go through these three basic things and then provide a complex platform for those who want to expand upon it for complex uses. The user of the simple DDoS application would simply stay with the basic IP flow spec v2. And some of the things we've done in the flow spec v2 specification are to make it very simple for that type of function. Here's the basic flow spec v1, here's user ordering, nothing else is added. When you add more, you go into adding either more IP filters, more IP actions, and non-IP. We've tried to schedule it so people can just work on the simple. Okay, so I think I rushed through that in our first discussion. Any questions on our goals? And I want to thank Randy for pointing out my complexity without mentioning the simplicity that we need as well. Okay. So these are just as a reminder, because I promised the flow spec v rules, the thing for the basic that carries over from the flow spec is you have user order, identifier, a logging identifier. We haven't gotten enough feedback to get rid of that so I'm leaving it in because it's in the flow spec v2 approved by the original adoption. The rule type, match operator variables and match value are inherited from v1. The order, just like in v1, rule 0, which was inherent in the v1 spec, but not necessarily popping out. So I'm trying to make it pop out to all of you. That rule 0, or the base concept, is you permit all traffic. And what happens with rules is they squeeze down traffic to less. Don't feel shy, and I'm sure Tony P will not feel shy about interrupting. So what this proposal is it has a specific type for only v1 filters, and the extended filter rules are being added with the version. Okay, so the basic function of DDoS is at filter type 1, it looks like order plus flow spec v1. Okay. So as you see, if you're familiar with flow spec v1, if not, I encourage you to read it. There's components, which are flow spec v1 components. And we had a proposal of TTL. Our current discussion is that the TTL should move to extended IP filters. So that's where it's going. So it's really just the flow spec v1 things. You can see that here with the flow spec v1 and the component in the extended filters. And non-IP is an extended. We've done some pre-allocation of component types, but we can argue the size of that in this adoption, or we can argue it before we do working group last call. Remember, flow spec v2 and v1 are ships in the night. I'm sorry, Tony P. Sorry for, want to say it out loud, or do you want me to try to? We do have a capability because they are ships in the night. This is inherent in this spec. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you, Sue.
Okay. It's ships in the night, 2 different LOIs. Uh, so they work ships in the night. The idea is you don't want it really have a flag day. You really want to have V1 filters, V2 filters, and the same basic rule to work on it. To blend them together, rule 1 to N is flow spec V2 with user ordering. Rule N to the end is flow spec V1. You're going to find that methodology. New user ordering in the front, because if you don't have it, then it just works as flow spec V1. Okay. The ruling beyond that follows the flow spec V1 ruling uh, to be upward compatible. If it's the same user order, then order by component number. So you would assume that rule N is a user order N, and then that number might be 1,000. So if it was N was 1,000, 1,000 is the same user order, and all the flow spec V1s occur at that point. So then they follow the flow spec V1 ordering, which is component number. And then within each component, there are rules for defining ordering within a component. And that is left to the person specifying the component. And those can be uniquely specified per uh, component approved by IDR and implemented in the same way. Okay, any questions? This is a review in case you missed it. There are two types of actions: extended communities in a various format in V4 and V6. And then we will add a community attribute action with the flow spec V2. That is our only way to add user ordered actions. And again, user ordered actions go to the front, um, and then the extended communities go at the back. Now, I anticipate for interoperability, there'll be a knob that says, and that says, hi, I want to flop that because my implementation needs to do X. It's fine. We'll write that into the spec. Just a minute, I'm reading Tony P's. If people, let me read your thing out. So if you have an extended community, you have a limited set of things for actions, and the FlowSpec v1 has a fairly good methodology that says, excuse me, you said actions, not filters. I'm going to pick that up, your question up in a moment, Tony. Tony is asking what happens if there's different parameters. We had problems with that, but I'm going to go into a long detail on it. So good question. Okay, there are 2 ways to specify it: extended communities, community attributes. Now, ordering and failure. And I'm going to pick up different types of parameters in later slides. So let me get through this and the other slides, Tony, and I'll come back. I think I just mentioned that the user first is user ordered, second is predefined extended community ordered by type. Okay, and that's a real push here for V2 is the one to make it deterministic is we pick something. Well, the simple pick for that is by type. So when you assign the type, that's what you work on. So type 1 goes before type 2. Now, I anticipate there will be knobs because that's not the way things happen, and there are interactions. So when you define communities and you define an extended in the extended community or in the path attribute, you have to define what it interacts with. The I will go through some interactions today, but I also went through a lengthy set of discussion on interactions in the last interim in May, which was the 13th. I will give you some of that data, but we'll pick up more in a session later this month if you want to ask more questions. But I think you'll probably see configurations knobs to have FlowSpec V1 actions take place. And these configuration options are good because we need transition, but they must be consistent. Now that's true now. That's not any more onerous than what people are doing now. But we have one other problem. What happens on a failure? There are 4 cases in netconf when you have some problem with a configuration. And FlowSpec is really a certain type of filter configuration. You can, in netconf, stop, go on, best effort, conditional go on, or roll back. We were looking for, the chairs were looking for some feedback because one of the strong feedbacks from the working group was determinism in FlowSpec V2 actions. Know what you interact with, and that in the extended communities, you're going to have to place in standards because there's no room to put it in the actual extended communities. You might have a dependency group in the community path attribute. Okay. We haven't gotten a lot of feedback on the failure modes. There is a proposal I'll go through to handle the failure modes, but there needs to be something because what people found is that's in common. In some cases with FlowSpec V1, when you hit a problem setting DSP or copying a packet, there's no real way to say stop because my action failed. It's really indeterministic. Some people stopped, some people went on, some people did some sort of conditional go on. But if it's inconsistent between routers, if one person who says set DSP and it fails says stop, okay, that's going to work one way. But if another person goes on, the same flow spec will have radically different functions. Okay, so what did we do to try to fix it? I tried to add, given background Donald and I have had in some of our IEEE work on what and netconf work, what happens when you have an action chain, and that's really what you have when you say set the DSP and then go on and pass the traffic or rate limit. So that's there, and we haven't really gotten on the mail list or in these working groups some sort of feedback. Given no feedback, I'm going to leave it in because it fixes a problem. If you have another fix, say something. Okay. Now, Tony, that answers the question of what happens if you have an order and something breaks in the action that does not necessarily have the base order. The base order works off of the number in the value, and conflicts work by pre-specification. This is a generic one and a flow spec, but notice all of them have ordering numbers, and the V6 would need the action chain ordering in the extended community because they're different. Okay, and I think I've gone through all of this, but Hopefully that can help you. Okay, path attribute. I'm going to go through this and then I'm going to ask if there's any questions. So the community path attribute is really just more flexible bytes. It has some general community path attribute flags, whether it's transitive across AS or Confederation boundaries. Within it, there is simply an action order. And this is the second thing that people have said is they want a dependency between various things. So there's a dependency chain. Jeff and and I think Donald thinks there's a lot to work on actions in this format. There's a lot of questions, a lot of interesting things to put forward. It's not in this user ordering of actions, and the action TLVs are not in the basic because we think there's things to work on. However, people have interesting use cases that they'd like to have it. So we're hoping to make it functional. Okay, Tony, I think I've gotten to where your question goes through. Do you have any questions? Surprisingly, Tony, not hearing you. Okay. These are some examples for the path attribute. Okay, this is an RPD match and set attribute, match and no advertise, deterministic latency from DetNet, and a TSN stream. There's a lot of work. These are some initial use cases, but there's a lot of work to get that done right. So we're putting this as the add-on and we're depending on people. Now, you need to look at our current structure as agreeing on the base and then working on it from there. Okay. We went through Nat's example at our last meeting, which was a good example of some of the problems. Just a minute, with the modifying a packet. We discussed it in detail. I'm not going to go through it, and I will make this a short meeting if there's no new questions. Okay, short meeting. Let me tell you what we've looked at. We looked at use cases, and I've talked through use cases with people who propose things. We're getting about 3 to 4 proposals for flow spec in IDR and other flow spec. For example, Adrian proposed an action in SFC and it's in RFC. It needs to be harmonized with the work we're doing. Other places, DetNet has proposed actions for FlowSpec for L2. Okay. Any comments on our ordering of components? You know, I gave you sort of gaps of components. One of the things Jeff mentioned is you might want to skip a few more. I just threw a dart at it. So what we'll probably do is make it an IANA function with a DE to go through ordering. Okay. The LRI format I went through very carefully to show you that both IP filters and extended IP filters. The ordering, no, the ordering is single integer, but it is not clear that monotonic ordering is in the best interest. And how do I know if I have them all? Well, that's one of the things one can, it is not clear. By the way, Randy, this is an excellent question that I've debated with some of the co-authors in Jeff and Care. Your ordering is monotonic, meaning you go 1, 2, 3, 4, but in as far as the numbering area, but they are not monotonic because people may want to go 1 on 100 as the next user order so they can stuff in a whole bunch of things in the middle. That was the simplistic approach. So the number area is increasing and the use of it is monotonically increasing, but you may skip from 2 to 99 so that you can insert things in. And the order space is intentionally large so people can do their own guess at how they want to do that. Other schemes seem to be more complex, and we stayed with the simple scheme.
Jump in a little bit. So the other issue, Randy, is that at the moment, FlowSpec v2 is not proposing to radically change how BGP is distributing things. So this means that a given router receiving FlowSpec rules is expected to assemble a firewall program based on the order that's supplied both by the explicit user order and the implicit component orders. So this means that BGP delivery can make differences, including does your traffic get thrown on the floor until you have everything? And this is one of the key discussion points as we start adding complexity to things.
So that's, again, our conundrum is we want a simple case. Yes, you are exactly right that the BGP reordering is why you asked. If you really want, if a user really wants it specified, they're going to have to make their user ordering work. However they decide to do it. Skip a few, 1, 2, skip a few. Yep. The specification gives you a deterministic ordering, meaning we're telling you it's FlowSpec v2 followed by FlowSpec v1 as far as sharing the 2 NLRIs in a firewall. Then we're giving you the rule case within each ordering. But beyond that, we're letting users define their own destiny. Okay. One thing that we left out is we left out new IP filters that weren't defined in V1 and created the new extension, which has a version in it. So when you go to, just a minute, I'm going to go backwards because you've not seen the other ones first. If you look at the component, we have an extended IP filter rules, which has the difference of putting a version number. So if you want to know if you support this set of filter rules, there will be a version number with a set of filter rules. Okay? So that you can say, I support XYZ. That is our way to try to provide orderly forward. It's a simplistic way in that a version doesn't cover everything, but it is the tension between simple and complex. And we put it at a different filter type so that the IP basic can smoothly go through. If the extended filter rules are popular, I'm sure that more people will switch to it, or certain applications like in-depth IP payload. USA has got a proposal there that will use the extended IP filter rules. Okay. I'm going to go back to the questions, and then if there's no comments on the questions, we will give you back some of your time. Okay. We made one of the real questions is, should component types be common in IPv4 and IPv6? The decision for the original FlowSpec v2 was to have common component types in IPv4 and IPv6. We don't have common action types in the extended communities, but that's already a pre-existing v1 split. We could order it differently. There are places where having the component types be common can put some space in. For example, specific headers that are v6 only per hop header is an example. We'll leave a gap in IPv4, but we didn't think that was going to be as much a problem as having two separate lists. Okay, one of the major problems that people are bringing up is groups and interfaces. Okay, can we say this policy only applies to this groups and interfaces? It's not in the basic, and the proposals on the table for groups and interfaces, we have some adopted for v1 that didn't rush towards specification quick enough so that when we did the call to make the FlowSpec v1 versus FlowSpec v2 cut, it appears that groups and interfaces fell after that cut, meaning they were supposed to be done in v2. We're going to relook at that with our current scenario, with taking extended communities into FlowSpec v2. Again, that particular functionality is really unclear whether we're working on FlowSpec v2 basic or additions. Right now, the basic left it out as part of the base requirement. One of the difficulties, if we add groups and interfaces, for this set of groups and interfaces for the inbound direction, use this flow spec, is the case given. There, it's unclear whether that works with just the basic and how you would add it. I think it works fine, but because they've proposed it for the extended community. Anyone have questions or comments on that? Again, we have left that out of the base spec because it wasn't under the what we thought was the minimal mandatory subset. Okay. I think we've gone through what happens if a filter format is broken. We've done mostly a treat as withdraw for FlowSpec v1. I've gone through the other orders. What happens if parsing and validation is correct, but the filter fails to install? I went through that as the action change ordering. And the validity checks for v1 were just imported directly into v2. We think that those specs are sufficient. Okay, that's all I have for FlowSpec IP Basic. Okay. Any questions, any other discussion? I will tell what next week is, but this is meant to be a check base. Okay. Again, I'm going to go back to something at the front to make sure we've got the context here. We're trying to get a minimal subset that's simple so that we can go on and place people who propose things for IDR in either the simple set or one of these add-ons that we can work on. Okay. Our intent is to adopt the simple set because that's the feedback we've gotten from most people. And then work on it in this way. All things will go through all the more IP filters, more IP actions, more non-IP filters and actions will go through adoption process. Jeff or Kay, or anything else on that slide before I switch?
All good for me.
Nope.
Okay. I'm not surprised. Okay. We will probably give a very short IETF presentation on the basic, as I expect the adoption to have occurred by then. The additional filters after a short introduction will be part of proposals that'll help people get going. We're going to work next week on some of these filters just to remind you the draft hairs IDR FlowSpec v2 filters is just the concept of how we could fit it together. It's the extension filters adopted and proposed. It is probably likely that we will split any proposed stuff off to their new draft and see if we can split the more IP filters into the minimal additions that need to be done for the more filters, meaning we'll have the base spec that says, here's the IP extended filters, here's 2 filters that were approved from, and the TTL and something else. And the rest of it, please create your spec based on this template. Then there are all these other specifications which we need to go through. Just a minute. So that's our intent for next week. I will contact all these people to see if we have any additions here that we can discuss. Otherwise, you may see a canceling of next week's additional filters, because if we don't have any more discussion on these filters, we went through them in good detail. I will contact all the authors. Notice those are authors who are proposing new filters. 2 weeks from now, I expect we will have a solid discussion because there is a lot of work in the actions. I outputted another flow spec action spec, but just like the flow spec V1, the concept is the draft that's HARES is simply a framework so that people can make a good decision on the minimal spec. Okay. Anything else? Nat, did we go through, make some of this stuff clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Changfen, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Okay, folks, unless there's anything else, I'm gonna declare victory and give you back time for the day. Jeff, any comments?
No comments. The thing I would like to see the most discussion on, and I still need to generate a mail to IDR, is over the component IDs and the sorting. So, different ways of dealing with that. That's what I'm looking to talk about.
I look forward to you generating some discussion on component IDs. I feel like I've thrown a dart at the dartboard and I really would like some component help there. Okay. Kayer, anything from your end?
Nope. I hope I'm audible. I am having an audio and connectivity issues.
You're audible to me. I hope to everyone else. Okay, well, thank you all for participating. Watch your mail. If we don't have a lot of additions for next week, we may cancel next week. We will hold one on June 17th. And there is a draft 0 interim, which is anyone who wants to propose a draft 0 for IETF 120 needs to at least give us a preview at the end of June so we can give you some feedback. So IETF's discussion is good. That worked well for 119. So we're going to try it again. Okay. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.